All right, entering this free agency period, we knew that the 49ers were going to have to add DB depth and just DBs in general, specifically cornerbacks, because of a lot of departures on the veteran side of the roster at that specific position. Well, they've just added another one, and this guy is really intriguing, Tre Brown, because he was literally PFF's top graded press corner in 2023. When we talk about scouring for value, finding guys with upside, and the 49ers have now added 4 defensive backs over recent days, 2 safeties and 2 cornerbacks, you look for profiles like the one that Tre Brown has, and it really fits the 49ers philosophy and what has worked at the cornerback position as far as tenaciousness, looking for guys who are like Diamador Lenore, like DJ Reed. Well, Tre Brown actually fits that mold. His agency announced today that he is signed with the 49ers. The terms of the deal are not yet available. It might just be a 1-year deal. Tre coming off of a season marred by an ankle injury. The 2 younger Seattle cornerbacks, Tariq Woolen and Devin Witherspoon, pushed him down the depth chart, but we obviously know that those 2 Seattle cornerbacks are good. If we go back and look at the 2023 season for Tre Brown, you will see all over the tape, you will see what the 49ers like and specifically what Robert Saleh wants out of this signing. Let's just go back in the big picture and look at what has worked for the 49ers and what hasn't at the cornerback position. Their very first pick at corner in 2017 under this regime, under Shanahan and Lynch, was in the 3rd round. It was for Ahkello Witherspoon. And I was at training camp, and I still remember when Ahkello Witherspoon was just absolutely blasted by a running back. I forgot which running back it was. Might have been Hightower, the veteran that the 49ers had in 2017 for training camp. I can't remember who it was. I wrote a whole article about it. But Ahkello just got completely destroyed, stepping up, trying to wrap up when pads first came on at training camp, and he flew backwards like 4 yards. And, you know, the question about Ahkello Witherspoon coming out of college was, is this guy physical enough? Is he enough of a dog to play at the NFL level? And I know that he's carved out a decent career for himself. He's hung around the league for a while, so you have to give Ahkello Witherspoon credit. But the reason that it didn't last longer with the 49ers is because he didn't have, at least early in his career, he didn't have the tenacity that was required for the 49ers press coverage system. So Ahkello Witherspoon was not extended by the 49ers after his rookie contract. Another cornerback who more recently didn't work out because he wasn't good enough in mano-a-mano battles, who just wasn't physical enough for the 49ers, was another 3rd-round pick in 2021, Ambry Thomas. He's no longer with the football team. So those are that's the archetype of the cornerback who didn't work, right? A player who might have been smooth, a good mover, but just didn't have enough dog in him to win in the scrappy way that it seems that the 49ers have really needed to succeed at cornerback. Because if we talk about the 2 guys who haven't worked, how about we talk about the guys who have worked over the years for San Francisco, who have carved out very good NFL careers or on their way to doing so. 2018, 5th-round pick was DJ Reed. 2021, 5th-round pick, Diamador Lenore. 2024, 2nd-round pick, Renardo Green. Jury's still out on Darrell Luter Jr., 5th-round pick from 2022, but he's still on the roster. He just hasn't had a chance at cornerback. But you actually have a decently long list of corners who have succeeded for the 49ers. And all of these guys are scrappy players, undervalued scrappy players at the college level, might be a little bit undersized, but their mentality has taken them to the top. And maybe that's the Richard Sherman effect on this locker room. I know that obviously he was a 5th-round pick. He was bigger, though. Richard Sherman was 6'3". Big part of the reason why he's going to be headed to the Hall of Fame is he learned how to leverage his size into becoming that great cornerback. But the mentality that Richard Sherman imprinted on the locker room from 2018 to 2020, I think has been passed down. And it's the corners who have that dog in them, guys like Diamador Lenore, guys now like Renardo Green, who have been the 49ers success stories. And I think that they see a lot of the same in Tre Brown. This is what I wrote up on the San Francisco Standard. So we could just go through the scouting report. It's up right now. You can go check it out. The article, I think, is linked in the description. Mike, if it's not linked in the description, can you please add it? It's the same article that starts with Joey Bosa. But 49ers agreed to Brown, according to his agency, PFF's top-graded corner in press coverage in 2023. He's been limited with injuries, including an ankle issue in 2024, but the 49ers' hopes with Brown are clear. They've succeeded with tenacious cornerbacks and are adding another one into the mix. Lenoir and Green are both built from that fighter's mold. So is former 49ers cornerback DJ Reed, whose physical measurements, 5'10", 187 pounds, are essentially identical to Tre Brown's. Saleh coached DJ Reed, who recently signed a lucrative deal with Detroit on both the 49ers and the Jets. Saleh likely sees similar potential in Brown, who might immediately slot in as the 49ers' third cornerback behind Lenoir and Green. Darrell Luter Jr. will also compete for that spot, as will new acquisition Tre Tomlinson. I don't want you to forget Tre Tomlinson because he's cut from a similar type of cloth, whom the 49ers claimed off of waivers from the Rams. Tomlinson's biggest limitation is his 5'8" height, but like Brown, he's the type of scrappy cornerback that the 49ers have enjoyed success with. The less physical types, Siakello Witherspoon and Ambry Thomas, haven't panned out as well. So the 49ers are aiming for the opposite archetype. Okay, so first, Tre Tomlinson. They have a lot of Treys on the team now. No Trey Lance on the team, but they've got a lot of Treys on the team. Tre Tomlinson and Tre Brown added here over the past few days. Tomlinson was waived by the Rams. I think this was on Thursday. 49ers claimed him off waivers from LA on Friday. That's a really small corner. That's 5'8", 177. That's the reason why the Rams waived him. Doesn't fit the NFL size prototype. But funny enough, you look at where he did play for the Rams, he played on the outside. I mean, in the past, and even now, typically, when you see a 5'8" corner, you're like, there's no way this guy can play on the outside. People need to realize how hard it is to make it to the NFL, make it onto a roster in the NFL, let alone see snaps in the NFL. For somebody at a 5'8" height to be able to earn just some snaps on a playoff team, on the Rams, this past season, that's what Tre Tomlinson was able to do. For him to see 44 snaps at cornerback is insanely impressive, and it speaks to his mentality to be able to overcome the obvious physical limitations. Not only did he see those 44 snaps on the field for the Rams in the regular season on defense, but he played outside cornerback. I think that says something about his mentality. So obviously the size is a limiting factor. Obviously it's something that he's going to have to overcome. It makes him an underdog. And I'm talking about Tre Tomlinson right now, not Tre Brown. But the fact that he already has accomplished what he has accomplished in the league makes him interesting, especially in the mold of 49ers tenacious cornerbacks, the guys that have worked in the past. We talk about Lenoir. We talk about Renardo Green. We go all the way back to the Richard Sherman mold. He was tenacious while also being 6'3", which was obviously the Hall of Fame equation for his game. But I just want to highlight the mentality that the 49ers are looking for. They're not looking for Kello Witherspoons. They're not looking for guys like Ambry Thomas. They're looking for guys like Lenoir, like Renardo Green, and they're trying to find value, and that's what is the underlying philosophy of this recent signing of Tre Brown. You know, we could look at the 49ers depth chart at the cornerback position to highlight what I'm talking about. This is the roster. Everybody that is a free agent signing is in teal. Re-signings for the 49ers this offseason, I have put in darker blue. I think Tre Brown is immediately the 49ers' third cornerback. Now, they could still add. They will still add. But this, you know, the way that this lined up is obviously Lenoir is your cornerback 1. Renardo Green is your cornerback 2. The third cornerback spot had been vacant. Tre Brown signed. I didn't put Tre Tomlinson in there yet because, again, the Rams just waived him. He's 5'8". He has a lot to overcome from the size perspective. But Malik Mustafa called Tre Tomlinson a dog the other day. I think that's worth listening to because Malik Mustafa himself is a dog. Tre Brown, as the top-graded press corner in 2023 in the whole league, definitely falls into the dog category. Now, people in Seattle speak very highly of him. He fell down the pecking order there because of the emergences of Witherspoon and Woolen. But if he gets a chance and he could stay healthy, it was the ankle injury that derailed him in 2024. I think that he's the leader in the clubhouse for the third cornerback spot battle. And that battle is between Tre Brown, Tre Tomlinson, and Darrell Luter Jr. as of today. So I hope that illustrates where the 49ers are right now with the cornerback position. It's fascinating to me because this team, it's really clear what the 49ers are shooting for. And I think that Mike illustrated this well. I think this is going to turn into a tweet. Maybe we need to credit Mike for the tweet. But we're talking about the value that the 49ers are looking for in free agency. We've noticed that over the past, 5 days or so, they've added 4 defensive backs, including Tre Tomlinson, who was that waiver claim. And, so much of this is coming from the flawed yet high upside potential and certain physical characteristics of some of these players. All these guys are very quick, for example. When you look at, I was talking about the safeties a little bit earlier today. When you look at Jason Pinnock, you're looking at somebody who's extremely explosive in short areas, is a 39.5-inch vertical leap. I mean, all of these guys have starting experience that the 49ers have added, especially through free agency itself. But they're flawed players in one way or the other, but they should be hungry, and they've demonstrated real upside in at least one very important phase of the game, or at least one important technique that the 49ers covet. So it's almost like the 49ers this is an extension of the draft when they're adding some of these players, because none of them are coming in at exorbitant price tags. The only price tag we know exactly right now is $1.5 million for the safety Richie Grant. The other contract numbers are going to come soon, but they're not breaking the bank. They're definitely not overpaying here, because these are all contracts that are closer to the league minimum than they are to multi-million-dollar deals. I view it as, anytime you have a pick in the 4th, 5th, even the 3rd round, but the 4th, day 3 pick, right? 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th round undrafted free agent. I mean, you're obviously bringing in somebody with some type of ability, because they're making the league. It's hard to make the cut in the NFL, but they're not going to be perfect players later in the draft. It's, outside the top 10 of the draft, especially this year, where it doesn't seem like it's a particularly top-heavy draft. It is very, very difficult to find a player who you say, okay, this guy doesn't have a weakness at all. So what you're doing is you're trying to find positive traits that fit really well within your system. And that's how you could find them at value. And I almost look at this free agency period so far for the 49ers as an extended draft. Again, look through the defensive backs who this team has added. And Tre Tomlinson, somebody who's got very good quickness scores, really tenacious mentality, fits in with some of the cornerbacks in terms of the mentality that have worked for the 49ers in the past. Tre Brown, the NFL's top graded press corner in 2023, similar measurements to DJ Reed, who was a success story for the 49ers. Richie Grant, I talked about him earlier today. We're moving over to the safety now, but that's a player who has a really good 3-cone time, really good short area quickness. They're probably looking at him more as a special teams player, but I think that there's upside here after his 4 years with the Falcons to at least compete for Jair Brown's safety position. And then likely even more upside for Jason Pinnock, who we discussed earlier this morning and yesterday, somebody with a really good relative athletic score. Pinnock was actually the highest graded blitzer at the safety position in 2024, 92.8 blitz grade. That said, his coverage grade wasn't good in 2024. So he's obviously much better at the line of scrimmage. He gave up something like 220 yards on 27 targets. Didn't give up, I think the passer rating was like 148.3 that Jason Pinnock gave up. So you have a player who has been, I think, you watch the tape and you say, okay, this guy has some ball hawk to him. He could play some center field to him in Jason Pinnock, but it was way too volatile. There was way too much boom or bust in the coverage for Jason Pinnock. He was giving up a little too much, too many big plays, even though there were some really impressive coverage plays. So the the bet that the 49ers are making, the investment that they're deciding to take here is that they say, hey, we've developed safeties before. We've developed corners before. They actually have a good track record, as I've just gone through all the players at cornerback they've developed. And I could talk about Malik Mustafa. I could talk about Talanoa Hufanga at safety. I think John Lynch is a good eye for that. But they believe that they can take the positive traits of these players and the positive performance record of these players, apply it to the biggest weaknesses that they have, which in a lot of cases is run defense, and they can develop some of the more negative aspects of these games out of these players' system. And if you fail with one player, if you fail with a couple players, it's not the end of the world, because you're signing them for deals worth probably $1 to $3 million a year. These aren't big deals. So it's just like a lower round draft pick, right? You're not investing the world in that player, but you see the upside trait and you try to develop that player so that the floor raises and the downside traits no longer are of huge concern to you. That's where coaching comes in. That's where Robert Saleh, Daniel Bullocks, who has the safety coach's background, right? But now he's the DB coach. And they added Tre Brown as the cornerbacks coach. They really like him on the staff this year. That's where it's on Kyle Shanahan's coaching staff to maximize the good, minimize the bad at value. It's a very Moneyball-like approach for the 49ers. And Tre Brown is the latest part of that Moneyball approach for San Francisco. So that's my read on the situation. I think that you're not going to afford Charvarius Ward. He's headed to the Indianapolis Colts. That's a $20 million corner signed for 3 years, $60 million with the Colts. You knew that you were going to have to replace Charvarius Ward entering this offseason. And the 49ers, through free agency, have done so at value rates, either through Tre Tomlinson or now through Tre Brown, who it could be a starting caliber player for the 49ers. He definitely was for Seattle in 2023. Again, the knee injury, though, his first year in 2021 led into a compromised 2022 season. We saw in 2022, the Seahawks started adding a lot of new cornerback talent to the NFL draft. So combined with a knee injury, he drops down the pecking order. But in 2023, has a 600 snap season with that really, really good press corner grade. And then in 2024, the ankle injury limits Tre Brown again. So he gets the fresh start with the 49ers. And I think that there's a lot more upside in this situation than you would know just by looking at this with the naked eye. I was watching some of the tape. There was a pick six that he had against Jared Goff. I don't give Tre Brown as much credit for this play. It was just a terrible throw from Jared Goff. But the announcer said, there's big play Tre. Yes, they called him big play Tre in Seattle. The press coverage scores in 2023 included 2 interceptions, 5 pass breakups, and I think a completion percentage of only about 59% into his coverage, which is really low, given which way the NFL has gone. So at 27 years old, short-term deal, the 49ers really feel that they have some real moldable clay to work with here with Tre Brown. Anyway, that's the signing this morning. We can look at the full 49ers picture so far. Let's go back to the roster. The way that I illustrate this is Teal is signing this year. I have Kevin Givens and Curtis Robinson and Teal. I should probably put them in dark blue. Re-signings should be in dark blue. So I'm going to make some edits and some fixes here to the depth chart. Givens, Robinson. But new additions are in teal for the 49ers. Gifford, the linebacker specialist. Tre Tomlinson, picked up off of waivers, claimed off of waivers from the Rams. Tre Brown, Richie Grant, Jason Pinnock, and Quindell Johnson was added earlier in the offseason for the 49ers as they continue to play Moneyball. Now, the new league year starts at 1 p.m. Pacific today. So at 1 p.m. Pacific, we do expect players to become available who hadn't previously been available. Now, some of those players who had been granted permission to start speaking to other teams early, like Javon Hargrave, they've already finalized their new contract. So Hargrave is going to sign with the Minnesota Vikings. There's somebody else, though, and I've mentioned him now 3 or 4 times, who's going to become available at 1 o'clock, and that is Dalvin Tomlinson. the defensive tackle from the Cleveland Browns. That's just the name I put out there as an example of the type of player to watch. The way that these teams operate, whenever you have a player with some years still left on his contract, or a lot of void year money in the future that's going to accelerate into dead money in 2025 or beyond, you usually are going to go and opt for the post June 1st designation, since it staves off the dead money hit till later. But you can't designate a player for that post June 1st cut until after the new league year starts. So that's why a big inflection point is this afternoon. The past 2 days have been the legal tampering window. So all business that has been conducted with players still under contract with their former teams is not official yet, and it cannot become official until after 1 o'clock Pacific time today. So, for example, when it comes to the 49ers, they're signing of Luke Gifford, they're signing of Tre Brown, the signing of Richie Grant, Jason Pinnock, all these guys, they're not officially on the 49ers yet. And it's not official until it's official, as we saw last year with Eric Kendricks, and that ended up being the reason the 49ers had to go to Devondre Campbell at the linebacker position. These players have agreed to terms with the 49ers, but since they're still technically with their old teams until 1 o'clock Pacific today, they cannot officially sign with San Francisco until that time. Now, it's very rare that a player pulls out of the deal in a situation like this, but again, it does happen. It did happen with Eric Kendricks at linebacker last year for the 49ers. Mike has a little bit of an update for us here. Dominic Purdy and Brock Purdy were among the top 25 in the NFL's performance-based pay pool. So players earn bonuses based on their performance. That's all part of the collective bargaining agreement. Out of the top 25 players, that list was released today. Purdy and Purdy fell onto the list. Purdy earned an extra $858,000 for his play in 2024. Dominic Purdy earned an extra $898,000 for his play in 2024. So both players up near $1 million in extra money. Rookie Dominic Purdy cashed in as the 49ers player who made the most in the NFL's performance-based pay formula. He rolled in an additional $898,000 to rank number 11 in the NFL. Purdy's $858,000 ranked number 16. So congratulations to them. Well-deserved. Purdy was still really good in 2024. Number 7 in QBR, despite everything crumbling around him. Dominic Purdy, obviously, I think, resuscitated the right side of the 49ers offensive line as a rookie, which is good reason to remember that the NFL draft is the lifeblood of maintaining a youthful and energetic roster in this league. Topping the list is Jamien Sherwood. He earned over $1 million, $1.1 million. Remember, Jamien Sherwood was a player whom the 49ers were interested in, played for Robert Saleh in New York, but he ended up re-signing with the Jets. One really good year so far for Jamien Sherwood. Earned him a lot of money at the linebacker position on the new contract with New York. Jalen Jones, Indianapolis corner, number 2, over $1 million. Michael Jackson, the corner for Carolina, number 3. All those guys made over $1 million. You know who else performed really well this past season? He was the 49ers swing tackle a couple years ago, Matt Pryor. Played for the Bears and way out-earned his contract, so he was able to get some performance-based pay boost in the tune of $1.02 million. But Purdy and Dominic Purdy both on the top 25 list representing the 49ers. Purdy from Kansas, Big 12 product. Brock Purdy, obviously, Iowa State, another Big 12 product, both over $800,000 in this season when it came to performance-based pay. So anyway, 49ers have now added Tre Brown. I'm going to go back to who they've added this year. Luke Gifford, Trey Tomlinson, Tre Brown, and the 2 safeties, Richie Grant and Jason Pinnock. On the offensive side of the ball, Luke Farrell and Demarcus Robinson. Patrick Taylor Jr. was a re-sign, so we should be shading him in darker blue for the time being. I'm ready to answer some questions. Let's go for it. Yes, we've talked about this with Matt Hennessy. The 49ers probably aren't picking up another veteran center. They might draft somebody who they can develop behind Jake Brendel and Matt Hennessy, but the practice squad poaching from Atlanta late last season of Matt Hennessy, who was the successor of Alex Mack and the predecessor of Drew Dahlman, actually, as the center for the Falcons, that's probably going to be Jake Brendel's competition heading here into the 2025 season. Chris asks, Purdy should have a deal pretty soon now. Do you think? Well, depends. Define pretty soon. Next couple days? I don't think so. Next couple months? Very possible. Maybe before OTAs would be really nice for the 49ers. I am getting good vibes talking to people in this situation. So I think that the Josh Allen deal really helped everybody, because the focus, the maniacal focus on average per year that has consumed the media, that has consumed my YouTube comment section, that has really just gone out of control, that was reined in with Josh Allen's deal, because he signed for $55 million a year. And now we also know the fully guaranteed money for Josh Allen's deal. It is $147 million. So I'll show you guys something. We'll go to the quarterbacks section of Over the Cap. I wonder if they have Josh Allen up there. They may not. They don't, but this is important information that we now know. So take a look at this as soon as I get it up on the screen. So these are quarterback contracts. First, we can sort by average per year. Dak Prescott, obviously, at the top at $60 million. Josh Allen came in at $55 million. So the fact that he wasn't obsessed with getting up to 60, I think just restores some order, because there had been stupid escalation for a number that doesn't really even matter. It was more of a vanity fest. But we know Josh Allen, working class guy, doesn't care about that kind of BS. He wanted a substantive contract with a lot of total guaranteed money. Well, total guarantees for Josh Allen were $250 million. So they're going to top this list. I'm now sorting by total guaranteed money. Total guaranteed money is not as strong as fully guaranteed money, which is guaranteed for skill, not just for injury. So I was really wondering where he'd fall on the fully guaranteed list. As you can see right here, Deshaun Watson's deal, the worst in NFL history, is just stupid. $230 million fully guaranteed. Other NFL owners aren't even taking it seriously. The race is for number 2. Nobody's trying to surpass Watson's deal. Quarterbacks and owners both realize that's an outlier. So teams are looking at the high watermark of Joe Burrow. Trevor Lawrence, number 2 at $142 million fully guaranteed. This is a really good gauge of a QB contract. And it just so happens that Josh Allen's deal has come in at $147 million in fully guaranteed money, which was directly designed to usurp Joe Burrow for the number 2 spot. Because again, the Browns don't know what they're doing. Everybody's ignoring the Browns. They're, the kid playing on the playground over by himself in the corner. The rest of the league is dealing with the contracts that actually make sense. So Allen barely surpasses Joe Burrow, $147 million fully guaranteed. I don't think it makes sense for Brock Purdy to have more fully guaranteed money than Joe Burrow and Josh Allen. I do think it makes sense for him to have about the same amount of fully guaranteed money as Trevor Lawrence, especially since there are some agency ties. When we look at Brock Purdy's representation and who represented Trevor Lawrence, we can discuss all that a little bit later when we get deeper into this. But Lawrence's deal was signed a couple years ago when the cap was smaller, ended up at $142 million fully guaranteed. And I think that we might see something similar in Brock Purdy's total. I don't know if 55, 56, 57 is the number. And quite frankly, I'm just like Josh Allen. I don't care. He didn't need to be at number 1 with Dak Prescott at $60 million a year. Instead, he comes in at $55 million a year with a deal that has very strong total guarantees. So the sanity has been brought back to the quarterback market conversation. That's great for the vibes surrounding the negotiation between Brock Purdy and the 49ers. And we're going to wait with eagerness to see what the final deal looks like. Andy says that a lot of his coworkers are saying the 49ers are doomed. But Andy thinks that they're doing something that should have happened last year. As long as they draft well, they can still make some noise in the playoffs. As long as they draft well, they can still win the Super Bowl. I mean, the NFL draft is the lifeblood, no matter what you do. And a lot of your coworkers don't know how to build an NFL roster. That's why they're your coworkers, and I'm guessing that you're not working in football. Thankfully, Andy is self-aware enough to realize that this is probably a little bit more complicated than social media lets on. Super Bowls, playoff runs are not granted on the first 2 or 3 days of free agency. In fact, they're never even granted in free agency. Typically, the highest spending team does not even make the playoffs. Last year, the Tennessee Titans spent $170 million. Guess what? They have the number 1 draft pick this year. They were literally the worst team in the league. So this whole idea that signing guys to overpriced deals is going to help you win Super Bowls is completely false. Value in the NFL has always lied to the draft. Why? Because this is a physical sport that means it's a young man's league. And young players are acquired through the NFL draft. That's where you're going to find the most value. It is not surprising to me that the 49ers are doing whatever they possibly can to extend the NFL draft. And by that, I mean they want as many draft picks as possible, so that they're about to rack up 25 comp picks over a 5-year stretch, most in the NFL. You want more darts to throw up against the wall. And through the signings that we've seen so far in this free agency, the 49ers are trying to emulate the NFL draft. Again, they are going for players who have specific upside, who have demonstrated specific upside. In the case of Tre Brown, he's been the top graded press corner in 2023 before the ankle injury in 2024. But they're also finding those players with the recognition that there are flaws in their games, so they can pick them up at a very cost-controlled price. They're not overpaying for them like some of the bigger names in free agency. And then they hope that they can develop the bad out of these players, or at least hide it moving forward within the context of their scheme and accentuate the good. That's exactly the mentality that you have when you draft somebody in the lower rounds of the draft. You know that they're not going to be a perfect player, likely not going to be a perfect player, because the rest of the league would have coveted them sooner in the draft if there had been fewer weaknesses or less visible weaknesses. But you also see that they're good enough to be drafted, good enough to be in the NFL. And some of these guys that the 49ers have added are definitely in position to be very hungry, probably all of them. These are not players that are coming off of signing deals worth tens of millions of dollars annually. So that's how the 49ers are building this team. They're focused on the draft aspect. And we knew that they're going to do this. I don't know why people are so up in arms. It's been very clear, I think, for a year at this point. It's been clear that this is how the 2024 or 2025 offseason was going to go. You could only pour money into things so many times until returns become very diminishing, right? The ROI in 2024 was horrific. The 49ers were the number 29 run defense. They were the number 26 overall defense. They were the worst team in terms of separating at the wide receiver position, or all pass catching positions, number 32 in the league. They were the second worst team in terms of running the football on third or fourth and short. So when they absolutely needed a yard, they really couldn't get it in 2024. And they were the number 20 team in terms of first down run efficiency, which is the basis of the entire offense when Kyle Shanahan is running his outside zone. That is what the 49ers got for all the money that they spent, the $334 million that they spent in 2024. Now, they got a lot of good times, obviously, over the course of 2019 to 2023 with the investment into the roster, which became increasingly veteran-laden. They were the oldest team in the league by 2024. So this is not to say that they didn't have a lot of success, that some of the marquee players didn't deliver at all. They did, but there comes a point when the returns diminish and you have to look at the long term in the NFL. And pouring money into specific issues has only worked in short-term bursts in the NFL. Only when you need to try to kick down the door and take it a step further than you were the year before. Just like, get that extra inch. That's the only time that it's worked in this league. The Rams are a good example in 2021. They needed a little extra, so they said, F them picks. Les Snead literally said that. And they just traded the farm for certain veteran players. Those guys came in. Von Miller was a great example. Von Miller's available now, obviously older than he was in 2021, but they were able to push through and win that Super Bowl in 2021 with the short-term investment. But what happened to the Rams after that? Well, they went into cap hell. They didn't have a lot of draft picks because they traded them all away, and they had to rebuild. And the way that they rebuilt is that they were able to accumulate draft picks by trading away some of the veteran players. They cleaned house, right? And they hit on 2 consecutive draft classes, 2 consecutive big draft classes were very successful for the Rams. And they retooled on the fly. They're right back in the playoffs this year. They now have an offense that is also getting cheaper, but they've still poured significant money into the offense, while their defense was the cheapest in the entire league this year, and it developed just as the rookies on it did over the course of the year. The Rams did that. The Philadelphia Eagles won a Super Bowl doing something similar. A lot of money in the offense. Defense, they went to rookies. They went through the draft. The Buffalo Bills are not all too different with how they've operated the team. They also let a lot of guys walk after the 2023 season to maintain some cost efficiency. So the good franchises understand this. The people sitting around the water cooler working a job that has nothing to do with football, who are complaining that the 49ers didn't overpay for players that are big names but may not even be at the peak of their careers anymore. Those people tend not to understand this. And hopefully I come in somewhere in between and I can explain strategy. And that's what's happening right now. This is a retool on the same kind of wavelength as we saw from the Rams, from the Philadelphia Eagles. And it's not the first time we've seen this type of retool, and it definitely isn't the last time that we've seen this type of retool. It all comes in the backdrop of these Brock Purdy negotiations, because the 49ers financial centerpiece is about to be their quarterback after it wasn't their financial centerpiece for a number of years. So it's, this is how the league works. Welcome to the NFL. This is typical roster construction in the NFL. You don't overpay in free agency if you want to be a consistently good team. And the 49ers had to overpay over the past couple of years because of the situation that they were in. There was a lot of heartbreak. They were so close to winning a Super Bowl. They felt compelled to try to buy that extra step. But, it's just, that's like going out and taking one of those cash advance loans, like the money on the corner of the street. That's like you're desperate to get a little bit more at the very snap of a finger, right? Immediately, but that never is going to be a long-term sustainable strategy. And at some point you have to move back to sustainability. And if you're not going to do it after finishing 6-11, near the bottom of the league in several key markers of team efficiency, when your team was the oldest in football, if you're not going to move to efficiency then you're never going to move to efficiency, and you're just going to spiral into a perpetual 4-3-2 win team. The Cleveland Browns are showing how not to do this, right? The Cleveland Browns had a chance to trade Myles Garrett for a lot of draft picks because they don't have a legitimate quarterback on the roster right now. Instead, they doubled down on Myles Garrett and paid him $40 million a year. That's the opposite of a good strategy. What's been documented to work is the cost-efficient strategy. And when we talk about the signing of Tre Brown, when we talk about what the 49ers have done so far in free agency, it's definitely following that mold. And that's all going to relate to the draft picks that they have. They've got 11 of them, and all the compensatory picks that they have, 25 in 5 years. That's all going to tie into the next wave of player acquisition. All right, that's why the 49ers signed Tre Brown, the top-graded press corner in 2023. Again, one more look at the roster. This is where he fills in. Deommodore Lenoir, Renardo Green, and then the competition for the third cornerback spot between Tre Brown, Darrell Luter Jr., and Trey Tomlinson. Going to be fascinating to see how that shakes out. And the 49ers probably not done adding, but cornerback room has more bodies in it now than it did a couple days ago, when really we only saw Lenoir, Green, and Darrell Luter Jr. on this side of the depth chart. They've added 4 defensive backs over the past few days. There's commonality between all of them, especially the corners. Remember the cornerbacks that have worked for San Francisco: Lenore, Ronaldo Green, DJ Reed. Well, Tre Brown has similar measurements to DJ Reed. The guys who haven't worked, Akello Witherspoon, Ambry Thomas, the softer cornerbacks, the 49ers are going for tenacious guys. And the way that they find value is because the guys are smaller. DJ Reed was smaller. Tre Brown is smaller, but that hadn't stopped him from performing well in his NFL career when he's been healthy. So the 49ers hope to scrounge that value with this pick. Here's what I wrote up on the San Francisco Standard. The link is in the description. I'll go ahead and toss it into the comment section right now. Go ahead and check it out. That's the latest on this 49ers signing. Hit that like button, hit the subscribe button. We'll talk to you later today when the 49ers make another move.